So I'm going to go over the final testing program, or my final testing protocol with this bronze ESIXL. Obviously, I currently have it opened to get a speck of dust that was underneath the digitizer. I have that noted down right here, and that's just something I had to do in another room. I will reassemble it, and then proceed with the actual final testing protocol. Actually, okay. Wanted to make sure I said that this digitizer was not new. It isn't, it's an OEM digitizer. Or at least from my understanding, the little ribbon cable of that color is only from OEM digitizers. Aftermarket ones use yellow. I already have the screen installed. Punching down the motherboard again. I usually need to open this console up anyway, just to confirm that my motherboard serial number matches my records that I have. I have a file of assembled consoles. So based on the shell numbers, 41188 bronze, 86354, it's this guy right here. And this motherboard is 06Y06. Okay. So both the motherboard and the shell match my records. I can go ahead and assemble from here. What I'm going to do is put a piece of Kapton tape on top of the connectors for the back screen LCD, or the bottom screen LCD, as well as the digitizer. Now, on OEM consoles that haven't been opened and taken apart, there is a white sticker on top of them, where it's like a opaque white tape. Not entirely sure why it's there. I'm guessing it's to just make sure those latches stay down and that the cables don't accidentally pop off. I figure if Nintendo was willing to put a piece of tape on, even just a small piece of tape like that could, I don't even want to think about how much money they probably spent on a giant roll of tape to hit every single console, but they were willing to spend that money, then add some purpose. I'm just taking a bit of Kapton tape, cutting little portions out, and placing them on the connectors. May do nothing, but they're not hurting. And just the rest of the tape I have, because I only use real small portions. I microphone. It's just those spots right there for the Kapton tape. Hopefully we'll keep those connectors down. Now we're going to put the shoulder buttons back in. This nice and closed back up. Battery cover. I won't put the bottom shell screws in yet. I want to make sure that the shoulder buttons and everything work, so that if I do have to take this apart again, I don't have to unscrew it. So, let me grab my paperwork for this console. I'm going to have to make right here. Way. This is a bronze console. Shell serial number WW411886354. WW411886354 with the board serial number 06Y06012 Q01BO83 negative A05. Don't know the software version yet, but the battery life, 4 hours, 20 minutes. Very nice. Now, I didn't look at... I'll look at my notes that I have on the computer to see if I did anything to this motherboard. Nope. I did no repairs on the motherboard. Ah, okay. Notes I have on the shell are the 2 retention clips on the left side of the top screen were broken off. If I remember correctly, these are going to be the little tabs that are at the top that functionally serve no purpose, because once you slide this shell together and stick in these 4 screws, the shell isn't going anywhere. And then also the big rubber sticker that sits underneath the top screen, it looks like it was a little chewed up. Again, that doesn't really matter. If I recall correctly, most of the pad was there. I'll make note of that. But I'll put 2 tabs. So neither of these issues are a problem, but if for some reason this console ever comes apart, those would be very plainly obvious. Okay, don't know the version number yet, so I'm just going to start going through my testing procedure. Oh, right. I also have it on my note here that there's a bit of surface rust around the bottom screen. If I recall, it does not impact the performance of the LCD. It's just the metal outer casing of the LCD just has a little bit of rust on it. I got as much as I could off of it, but you can never get it all. Unless you really just sand it down, which I don't really think that's necessary. Should be an environment that's free of moisture, so it shouldn't get any worse. So, turn it on. Obviously, console turned on, power board and motherboard functional. Get my R4 card to start testing various aspects of the console. First starting with the tactile buttons. Diagnose.se. Diagnose. This is the testing software I use for buttons. Buttons. I'm going to press each button about 5 to 10 times. Shoulder buttons I pay special attention to because they're the ones that most often fail. See, like right there, our button's not coming up at all. Now this should have been caught in my initial testing, but I'm getting no response. Oh, there's one response. It's very inconsistent. Now what I can try to do is clean the button. I'll just look at it. But I might just end up just completely swapping it out for now. I have a lot of spares. And soldering a new button on is a bit of a procedure I don't want to do, especially with final testing. So for now, what we'll do is just replace it with another one. I don't know if it works, but it was from another console that was in visually good shape. Don't know any more beyond that. Here it is right here. The button looks fine and externally, but obviously internally, button either has some corrosion on it or whatever is keeping it from making contact. I'm gonna grab another one. It looks as good as any of the others. Good click to it. And I'll just go ahead and reinstall this bottom shell. Now usually this would be caught in my first round of testing, but it is possible I did attempt a cleaning on that R button, but it didn't stick. Or the cleaning didn't work. Or I need to clean it more intensely, or I just simply need to replace the button. Camera up a little bit so I'm not working in such a cramped space. Okay, both shoulder buttons sound good. Try that again. I do notice the edges of both screens are yellowed. Deal with that later. Yeah, looks like this other R button working just fine. Okay. I'll just quickly text the microphone just by tapping it. You can see it's responding. Cool. Tactile buttons are good. I'm gonna put this battery cover on so it doesn't accidentally pop out when I do my game card testing. I'm gonna open up another application to test the touchscreen. Yep, no breaks, no like jagged entries. I can get around the border of the touchscreen just fine. I see nothing wrong with that. Okay, so next I'm on to speakers, microphone, and headphone jack. Now I know that the microphone and the microphone, the headphone jack, and the speakers work because when I run my battery testing, I run it on max volume and pipe the audio through the headphones, but I am going to double check. This also serves as a test for my SD card that I just put in. I have a music track loaded up on the SD card, and if the console can read the music on the SD card, then I can assume that it can read all the contents on this SD card. I am going to quickly check the headphone jack again just by plugging in a pair of earbuds, and I'm going to listen to them real quick. Yep, both left and right are coming through. I can hear it through the speakers. So not only does the SD card slot work, everything else works. Will double check the microphone real quick, just by recording myself. Da 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 da. Oops. Da 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 da. Yep. So it recorded my voice. All of the audio systems work. For the camera, press one of the shoulder buttons. Bring up that. Pop camera. Yep. Both the cameras work. The charge port, I'll grab the charger that I'm going to sell this console with. This guy. Since I already have it bundled up and my outlets are off screen, I'm going to take the console off screen. And I'll kind of show what I do with these once I bring it back. Solid orange light, and it doesn't go out when I wiggle it. So I guess for the sake of testing, I'll grab my charger that I have unwound. This one. And basically what I'm testing is I plug it in, get a solid orange light. Yes. Now what happens if I wiggle it around, which in most circumstances shouldn't. Hopefully you're not doing this, but the orange light stays solid entirely. So I would say that passes. Now I've already tested the SD card slot, and I have no reason to believe it doesn't work. The game card slot, what I do is I just throw a stack of shovelware in it and see if it will read it. Now there are variations in this shovelware. Some are easier to read than others inside the console. So let's just look at them. Crafting Mama is very easy for my consoles to read. And since my console read my R4 card, I had no problem reading Crafting Mama. Now what I'm going to do is put a little bit of pressure on it and kind of wiggle the cart side to side to see if it disappears. It doesn't, and then I'm going to quickly give it a thud. Oh. Try that again. See if I can replicate that. Now why exactly I do that is if the card slot is dirty and the cart disappears from the menu, while you're playing it, the console will either freeze or shut off. And that can be completely random and unexpected. Since I'm able to wiggle the cart side to side inside the game cart slot, and it's not going away when I'm thumping it, I accidentally opened the camera. Then I think the game card slot, at least for Crafting Mama, is good. Let's test other games. Dog Whisper. This one can be moderately difficult for my consoles to read. Comes up just fine. Wiggle the cart side to side. Not going away. Cool. Wonder Pets. This card has a very hard time being read on consoles, so we'll see. Ooh, comes up just fine. Basically, I use Wonder Pets as a metric. If my console can read it, then game card slot's good. SpongeBob also is moderately difficult to be read. Sometimes it doesn't come up on consoles that are reading other cards. Let's just say this test isn't the most consistent, but sort of my metric. Bejeweled 3. Like in this case, Bejeweled 3 is not coming out. And this could be just a problem with the card. Oh, there it is. But if I wiggle it side to side, oh, now it's coming up. Okay, coming up consistently. I can't replicate any of those drops that it was showing. Like Bejeweled 3 kind of dropped out there for a second, but I couldn't replicate it. Possible that was just a game card, or possibly just like the system itself kind of, I don't know, overreacting to how many game cards I put in it. So as far as I'm concerned, the game card slot's good. Wi-Fi I'll test off screen because I need to use my phone, which I'm currently using as a camera. Which I almost never run into a case where the game card slot fails. Or not the game card slot, but the Wi-Fi fails. They almost always, or they always connect to my access point. I always test it just to make sure, but the Wi-Fi card was having issues. The console itself would be having far more issues than just not being able to connect to an access point. So, since I'm fairly certain I won't need to bring this console, take this console back apart, I'll put it back together. I'll go ahead and stick the screw covers in. Ooh. Would look like that the screw, that post is stripped. Doesn't look like that screw is going to fall out. It's cinched enough to where the shell is together, but that screw does not stop. It will keep spinning. I do not see that as a problem though. It's cinched enough that it keeps the shell closed and out of the way of game cards, not sticking up. Okay. Let me grab my giant pillbox of screw covers. Ooh. Bronze ones I have right here. Grab a clump of them. That is 3 feet to top shell. More top shell and foot. One top shell and a foot. I can peel this one off. I should take more care of storing these. They don't stick to each other like this. It only just makes it a little more difficult, but doesn't for them. Now a lot of these will already still, or they'll still have adhesive on them, but I'm just going to add a little bit of my own, which in this case is Elmer's glue. Just going to add a very, very tiny amount. I'll let out some air in the Elmer's glue so it's not just fiddling all over the place. What I do for the top screen is get little bit of glue coming out, and then I just kiss the top of these screws. Just barely any. Like barely enough to just fill the grooves in the head of the screw. You can think of an amount. Maybe not even enough to fill those grooves. The smallest amount you can. These screw covers do have a side to them because they'll be the outer facing side and then the bottom facing side, which will have the adhesive on it or remnants of. I'll lower them down with my tweezers and then sort of put them into place with my plastic pry tool so I'm not putting metal on plastic. The adhesive remnants of both a foot and a top screen to cover. I just kind of press them down a little on the edges, but they usually sit down pretty good. Perks of OEM is they go together just as good as they came apart. And sometimes if I accidentally add a little too much glue, it'll dribble out from the sides of the covers, but I just wipe that up with a towel. Or it looks like I'm doing okay. Alright. 4 of those went in very nicely. The bottom. Same procedure. I'll just barely just kiss the inside of these screw holes with Elmer's glue. These do experience a little bit of mechanical stress, so it doesn't hurt to put a little more glue. But since you're physically placing the screw covers on the ground or desk or wherever, unlike the top screen screw covers, which will probably never touch anything. Sort of plop them in. This screw cover is a little chewed up on one side. I'm going to put it right here on the bottom facing inward. There's a little pit in this shell. I guess you can't see it because it's off screen. I'll zoom in on. There's a little pit in the shell, so the damage kind of lines up in a way. It's not just like a shitty screw cover on a otherwise perfect back shell. This back shell has marks on it. What I was talking about is right here. Oh. Poor camera is having a hard time picking that up. But the side of the screw cover, there's a little chunk missing of it, but then there's also some pitting in this shell. So it sort of matches. Checking the height of the screw covers. And they're sticking out enough. Over very small amount. And then for no real reason, I'll just kind of place it on the table and press it down. Ah. Covers are on. Next thing I need to do is give it a quick wipe down. Get all of my finger oils and fingerprints and all that goop off of it. And then give it a condition assessment. So what I do is just get a microfiber cloth, load it up with distilled water, and then just give it a quick wipe down. And why I say load it up is because I take the distilled water out with a syringe and control the amount I take out. Nothing too crazy, just quick once over all of the surfaces as well as the screens. Need to get the edges of the bottom screen. And especially around my new screw covers, just in case some Elmer's glue came up. Around the face buttons, because those are what I was touching. And special attention on the top screen, or the top glossy piece. I'll just go through with a dry one. I'm not necessarily doing this to soak up any water. There should be basically no water left on the surface, but just in case. Yeah. That's good. Sort of running through procedure in my head here. Alright, so now we can go through the actual condition assessment. I'm going to get stuff out of my way. Got a drop of water on my sheet. It'll dry off. Physical condition of the shell. So this glossy top piece is pretty marred up pretty good. You can just sort of see all the spots on it. The left hinge actually looks pretty good. The right hinge has a chunk, like a good impact spot. Like there's like damage around the charge port. Really don't know how to interpret that. Like it was like dug out or something. Scratches right there. I'm just noticing there's marks kind of all the way around this. Now the face side, the most important, actually looks really good. Like there's a little bit of wear around the D-pad. You can kind of see the darker spots. I think, yeah, I'll give this a good. This glossy shell piece at the top is pretty bad. Good is a 1 out of 3. Glossy shell. Glossy shell is rough. Bottom shell has a lot of scuffs. Or a lot of scratches on edges. And discoloration around D-pad. Physical condition of the hardware, which is an assessment of the buttons. They all look really good. One mark on the R button, but yeah, I think that's an excellent. Physical condition of the screens. Now these ones are not perfect. Be a little hard. There's a couple scratches on the top screen. And the bottom screen does also have some scratches. Right up here. Is that a hair beneath the digitizer? It is, but I can't see it when the console's on, so I'm not going to worry about it. And all the dust you see is just why I don't like doing digitizers down here. There's a couple scratches on the top screen, a good scratch on the bottom. But other than that, the screen, or the digitizer itself, is in pretty good shape, as well as the top screen. There are a lot of really light hair scratches on the top screen. I think my first reaction is good, so I'm just gonna do that. Lots of hair scratches on top screen. Scratch on bottom. Screen condition, this will also be a rough one. Both screens are experiencing yellowing on the edges. Now, if my understanding is correct, just playing on the console for a significant amount of time, it'll eventually get rid of this yellowing. Those claims are very unproven, I suppose. I'm currently running a test on a bunch of DSi XLs to see if there's actually some validity in leaving a console on a white screen, similar to this, and just letting it sit for weeks. So whether or not that actually comes out to be true, I don't know. But for now, there is minor yellowing around the edges, but this is one of those things that you're not going to be able to really make it out with content playing. If you're playing a game, you're probably not going to see those very mild yellow edges. That's even if you can see them on this screen through the camera. So it's really just a matter of what you tolerate. Like, if that really bothers you, then I wouldn't recommend it. Would this bother me? Probably not. Because once I start playing games, I wouldn't notice it. I'd completely forget about it, and with enough hours, I almost wouldn't even see it anymore. I see it because I just work with these consoles all the time. So because there's yellowing on both screens, this is one of these things where I really don't like giving a lower rating on these screen conditions because I almost always will aim for the best screen experience that I can get on these consoles. But the yellowing is on both screens and it's very mild. If it was only on one screen, I would probably give it a very good. I will give it a good. Minor yellowing. Minor yellowing on the edges of both screens. State. So putting that all together, 1113. That's a 6, which is in the good. Would I consider this console good and not very good? I only need to look at this top glossy piece to say, yeah, this is not the best shape. But I will price it accordingly. And for people who aren't too concerned about the exterior look of it, or if they're just going to be like, well, I'm going to be jamming this in my pocket anyway, it's only going to get worse. Why buy a pristine one if it's just going to get scratched up? I feel like the most important part of these DSi XLs are the actual gameplay experience of them, and less so about the cosmetic pieces. So even though these screens are mildly yellowed, they have a few scratches on them. You can't see the scratches when the console is on, and once you start playing a game, you won't see the yellowing. All the buttons work, game card slot, SD card, all that. They all work. So I figure as a gameplay experience, this is of no different than any other console that I would sell, be it one that's in pristine condition or maybe even one that's in worse shape than this. I'll always aim for that base level of playability. So, I never checked the software version. Software version is important, mainly because our 4 cards will have issues playing on recent software versions. So if I understand my software version, this currently is running version 1.4.5U, which I understand that to be the very last update that Nintendo pushed out. This R4 card that I got at Amazon works on every single version. This Ace cart, however, on now. Sometimes I have to take out the SD card, reinsert it. Or, so what will usually happen is that is not a fault of the game card slot. What might be happening is I don't mean to kind of leave you hanging here. So the point I was going to make is my Ace card won't read on the newest software revision. I didn't mean like, I wasn't expecting it to literally not read. There it is. Thank you, DS. Cool. Basically, what usually would happen is the game card would come up. And when I go to launch it, it would do this. So that's because this console is updated too far beyond what that Ace card can do. And, well. So for the sake of R4 cards, that is, having the version number is important. I don't know why it's having a hard time being read on this console. Might need to clean this card. I don't really use it that often. I mostly just use this one because I know it works on all of my DSs. Anyway, that was a tangent. What I'm going to quickly do is the actual video for the condition assessment. I'll do my glamour shots and post it on eBay. See how well it does.